And we have a little bit of a different opening for today. So we are back. And thank you so much for joining me this weekend on Iconic Freedom, the formula, setting the standard for accountability and responsibility, the ownership of our choices, and the ability to respond to those choices. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for. So what happens to a person when they abandon truth, when they surrender integrity, when they reject responsibility in favor of, power? They become unrecognizable to themselves. That clip from Lord of the Rings, the Smeagol to Gollum, isn't just a fantasy transformation. It's a mirror. A warning, maybe, a roadmap of moral decay. Because when the desire for control overrides character and integrity, the very pillars of accountability and responsibility, the soul rots from the inside out. Smeagol didn't wake up one day as Gollum. It was a slow, corrosive process, just like we've seen in our politics and more broadly in our culture.
And so I'm sorry, Bakari, your party just engaged in the biggest cover-up in modern American political history on Joe Biden. It's all coming out. We all now know that every Democrat knew it, and you and everybody else came on TV and lied about this man's condition. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Well, the Biden cover-up is the worst thing we've seen in this country in your or my lifetime.
And so should his advisors. I mean, talk about a big cover-up. I mean, we've been talking a lot about Donald Trump lately. I just want to ask a simple question. Who in the heck was running the country? If the president's mental acuity was in question and some days he's on and some days he's off, was the guy really capable of doing the job day to day? I honestly really question that. And I think a lot of Democrats who said at the time, oh, Joe Biden is the fittest guy in the world. He could do backflips. He could jump into the pool, run marathons, do 100 push-ups. When every freaking person who saw Joe Biden said, there's no in hell this guy is physically fit. But they told us, don't believe your lying eyes because we're with him every single day. That wasn't true.
It can all be told now. I mean, I sat here all during the campaign and was assured Joe Biden was fine. Kamala Harris had the most organic, grassroots-driven campaign. The Democrats were unified. We had a campaign of joy, and everything was hunky-dory. That's what I was told night after night after night. Mm-hmm. And now all the books are coming out, and it's amazing because a lot of the people who were telling those lies are now going to get paid to write those books.
I think a lot of people,
it's crazy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that betrayal, being lied to their face about Biden's health, about the strength of the party.
Our own government from the White House podium lied to us about his condition and covered it up. And even Ron Klain, the former chief of staff, is now saying things that are crazy when you read them.
So lying is wrong, right, Scott?
Right.
I'm going to hold you to that.
I agree that we lived through the biggest scandal in modern American politics, John Avalon, yes.
All right.
So now they say it. Now they admit what millions of us have been seeing for years. And it's not because they finally found their moral compass, but because the lie no longer serves them. Because that illusion is breaking, it's cracking, and the consequences at this point are too big to hide. And so how do they respond? So with deflection, and they do this quite often because they like to point to January 6th, right? So when caught in this light of truth, if you will, they don't apologize. Not that we want their apology, because we don't need it, right? But they don't explain. They pivot, they point, they yell, they have their vocal hysteria. But what about January 6th? What about January 6th? As if that excuses the deception. As if someone else's failure wipes clean the record of their own failure. I mean, it's absolutely breathtaking. That's not accountability. That's narrative manipulation. And that's the politics of distraction. Oh, that sounds good. Write that down. That's the politics of distraction. Deflection is a coward's way out, and it's a strategy that is used not by innocent, but by those trying to avoid the consequence of their own choices. So Joe Biden's cognitive state didn't deteriorate overnight. We all know that. The signs were there, the moments were visible, and yet time and time again, the media, the establishment, the self-proclaimed champions of democracy, they told the American people to look the other way. I played you that clip months ago of Mark Halperin saying that back in 2017, he could see that there was some decline, and nobody said anything. And what was that reason? Because power is their end-all and their be-all. Because maintaining the illusion was more important than facing the truth. And here's the truth they refuse to say out loud. Responsibility is that ability to respond, and accountability is the consequence of that response. They had the ability, they had the opportunity, and they chose deception. It is a choice. And a person can sit there and say, oh, well, I wasn't aware of the choice. It's still a choice, and you made it, and you're still accountable. But, okay, so this isn't just about politics. It's about principle, right? It's about integrity and character. It's about people who are so addicted to control and power that they will throw themselves into the fire and hold on to their precious like Gollum did, right? And towards the end of that movie. No self-reflection, no self-evaluation, no humility, if you will. Just like this never-ending chase for influence at any cost. They don't care, right? And we the people, are left to deal with the consequences of that cowardice. It's as if they lit a match and tossed it behind them, and we're the ones that have to clean up the mess. So this particular podcast, this isn't just about exposing a lie. It's about issuing a challenge. And I've written a few things down that I think, I thought had some value to it, and maybe you will too. So stop outsourcing your judgment. Stop ignoring your gut. Stop allowing people with no sense of responsibility or accountability to make decisions for you. I'm going to say that again. Stop allowing people with no sense of responsibility or accountability to make decisions for you. If you observe that person, observation, if you observe that person, that individual over time making decisions and choices and being responsible and having that ability to respond and owning the consequences of whatever the outcome is, those might be people that you might ask questions to, but ultimately you have to own it. If you want a life of integrity and character, you've got to own it. That means taking responsibility for these choices that you make, standing tall in the consequences they bring. I mean, isn't that like real power? Isn't that like true freedom? It's not the illusion. It's not you scamming yourself. It's not some performance. It's not political theater. They're really good about their political theater. Oh my gosh, it's nauseating. But it's about radical personal responsibility. Okay, so what do we do with all of this? Do we just shake our heads and we scroll on TikTok or, Instagram or X? Do we do that like it's just another headline in the news cycle? Or do we start to see a bigger picture? How abandoning responsibility at the top, it will filter down into how people show up in their homes, their work, their friendships, their own lives. Here's an uncomfortable truth. This Gollum-level obsession that liberals have with power isn't just a they problem. It is a we problem. When we choose convenience over conviction, when we avoid hard truths to keep the peace, because we don't want to upset the apple cart, when we tolerate manipulation, all in the name of unity, we want both sides of the aisle. No. And compromise, if anybody says compromise to you, in your mind, you should be interpreting that as a cancer, because that's what compromise is. It's why every podcast, I will always bring it back to here. responsibility, that ability to respond to our circumstances with clarity, courage, character, integrity, and the accountability, that willingness to own whatever follows. Whatever follows. There is narrative versus control. The media didn't miss Biden's decline. They hid it. They lied. There's this cultural fallout when institutions, they model the denial. And then what do? What are they teaching our kids? What are they teaching other members of society? Learn to avoid. And, this thought came to me as well, is that reclaiming your agency, you start with yourself. You audit your motives, your choices, your integrity. I've talked so many different times, and I hope it's valuable to you, about how I would walk through my day, and I did this for months, where I would ask myself, what is my motivation for doing this? Now what is my motivation? Now what is my motivation? Until I figured out all of my motivations and I stopped scamming myself. Okay, couple of questions. I want to show these next two clips because I think they're really fascinating. One is from this woman on CNN where she talks about, all of the messaging and everything. But, we can't move forward with all of this, with integrity. We can't do any of that until these people own their stuff, right? Until they have accountability. And then the last one is with Piers Morgan. And I thought it was very funny, so I wanted to share it. But here's some what I would call reflecting questions, right? Are you addicted to your own version of the ring? It's a nice ring. Does it really hold the power that you think that it does? Okay, so what else are you clinging to that might be costing you clarity, integrity, or your character? Are you holding on to something? You're holding on to an outcome? Because we've talked about holding on to the outcome and what that does to us. Or are you avoiding the consequences of your own choices? People do that all the time. They avoid. I'm not going to answer that text. I'm not going to answer my phone. I'm not going to answer my door. I'm not going to respond to that person. Whenever I'm avoiding the consequence, I'm going to deflect. Or they say X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to follow up with A, B, and C. I'm not even going to address X, Y, and Z. He sits there, Scott Jennings makes the comment about Biden's decline, and instead of owning that and saying, hey, you are correct, this is not right, blah, 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 blah. The deflection of trying to get the conversation to go off to January 6th or whatever else is just that. It's a deflection, but it's also that avoidance of the consequence. It's avoidance of accountability. So let this be a mirror, if you will. We don't fix the world by, ranting, right? We fix it by owning our own choices. And so I'm going to finish up with these two clips, and I hope you enjoy these.
They're missing the point. Democrats are missing the point about what happened. It wasn't Obama's fault. It wasn't Kamala's fault. It wasn't the messenger. It was the policy. It was bad policies, economic, immigration, and crime. Until they acknowledge those policies failed the American people, and we lied to the American people about whether those policies were working. We said the economy was great. We said there's no crisis at the border, and we said crime is going down. Until they acknowledge that, all this other noise, it doesn't matter. If Democrats want to win again, they have got to jettison bad policies.
They had to have turned the clock back maybe 4 or 5 months before even the debate that Joe Biden bungled to get to a point where they could start to address what you're saying there.
Clear about Obama and the George Clooney's and the others. A month before that terrible debate, where the world saw Joe Biden laid bare in a most embarrassing manner, they all had a fundraiser in Los Angeles. They raised millions and millions and millions for a guy that they all knew. Obama had to lead him off the stage. They all knew that he was unfit for office, but they were prepared to perpetrate this lie on the American people. So I have zero sympathy for any of them. And then what they're trying to do now is they're all trying to position themselves as the one who shouldn't be blamed.
Yeah.
Right, Clooney's like, but I blew the whistle. And other people are like, only because Obama told you to.
Yeah.
He's like, no.
And to be clear, Obama only told them to after the checks cleared at the fundraiser.
Exactly.
I remember reading the op-ed. He's like, 3 weeks ago, I was with President Biden. He wasn't the same guy.
I mean, he literally led him off the stage. Do you remember that video?
I do. We grabbed him by the hand. They told us it was a cheap fake.
Yes, and anyone who questioned this was being unbelievably unfair to a brilliant-minded guy at the top of his game. That was the briefing from the White House press room.
How dare you?
Yes!
You know what the craziest part of the whole story is? If you look out at the field, Biden's actually the Democrats' best option in 2028.
What? Dead or alive?
And I want to address something about that clip just now. The first one that you saw from CNN where Abby was sitting there and she says when Joe Biden bungled that debate, she's still not getting it. She's not taking ownership. She's not being responsible. She's not being accountable. And the worst disrespect of all is that she's sitting there saying that he bungled it. Did he? Did he bungle it, or was he just being who he was? Was he just being Joe Biden because of where he was at in his health? And the fact that you all lied about it, that's the piece that I think is so amazing. When you talk about, this episode of, the forensics of lying, this is what the forensics of lying is about. It's about deflection. It's about not taking ownership. It's not even taking ownership of the reality. And it's scamming yourself, and it's using language and all kinds of other shenanigans to try and lie to other people. And it's all of that avoidance. So there you go. And of course, that last clip with Piers Morgan and Jimmy Fallon, I thought that was hilarious over the weekend, so I thought I should share it as well. So there you go. Okay, so listen, if today's podcast hits you in the gut and you want to do 3 things, like the episode, share it with someone, your family or your friends. You never know how this message might help them in trying to figure out their own blind allegiance to things or their own excuse making, or at least just start recognizing it in the world around them, because these people are in your life, and it may not be something as serious as, politics and, saving the world, but in your world, in your universe, it is important. It's important to where we give blind allegiance, and we go deaf, dumb, and blind to some people, and we outsource our responsibility and accountability, and we use these words like trust, and we should never be using trust, right? That trust is for self. It's not to extend and outsource to other people. And if you would, subscribe so you never miss an episode that cuts through the noise and brings it back to what matters most: personal responsibility and real-world accountability. And listen, if something I said today sparks something in you, I want to hear about it. So DM me, email me, drop me a comment. Your feedback will help shape this show more than you could possibly know. And you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, True Social. Just search for Iconic Freedom or hit the links in the show notes. And as always, let each care for self, and all will be cared for. Until next time, stay sharp, stay sovereign. See you next week.